All right, guys, so we got to talk about Joe Biden's economy, as the Biden administration is making us some promises about the future of the economy that I want to talk about. But first, we got to talk about some of the past promises and things that the Democrats said about the economy that weren't necessarily true, which means that we probably shouldn't take their current promises about the future of the economy very serious. Because last year, they promised us, they told us that inflation is transitory.
I really doubt that we're going to see an inflationary cycle.
Most economic analysts believe that it will have a temporary, transitory impact.
The faster than expected increase in some of those prices is actually a good sign.
The overwhelming consensus is going to pop up a little bit and then go back down. No one's talking about this great,
This is something that will settle down.
Transitory.
And the data shows that most of the price increases we've seen were expected and are expected to be temporary. There's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. It's highly unlikely that there's going to be long-term inflation that's going to get out of hand. I don't know anybody who's worried about inflation.
Over the last couple of months, we actually saw it trended downward.
President Biden's chief of staff, Ron Klain, enthusiastically retweeted an economist who had said in part, most of the economic problems we're facing, inflation, supply chains, etc., are high-class problems.
What is the Granholm plan to increase oil production in America?
Oh my God. That is hilarious.
Yeah, so that is a montage of the Biden administration either flat out denying that inflation is a thing or laughing at journalists asking legitimate questions like, when are we going to produce more oil in America to help alleviate gas prices, which is a part of the energy inflation that we are seeing. Now, the Biden administration's solution, their proposed solution to inflation, was basically Build Back Better Life, which basically is spending trillions more dollars in order to try to cure inflation, even though we know that spending the trillions of dollars during the pandemic is part of the reason why we have inflation in the first place. And it seems like the Biden administration hasn't quite learned their lesson from that.
Mr. President, are you confident you have, I know you're looking for more money from Congress for this vaccine campaign and for COVID funding going into the fall. How much of the supply of vaccines for these small children is there, and how many of the nation's kids will you be able to get vaccinated before you need more money from Congress?
Well, we'll get through at least this year. We do need more money, but we don't just need more money for vaccines for children eventually. We need more money to plan for the second pandemic. There's going to be another pandemic. We have to think ahead. And that's not something the last outfit did very well. That's something we've been doing fairly well. That's why we need the money.
However, again, the Biden administration thinks that people are dumb, and they're a little dumbfounded that the American people aren't actually falling for their silly excuses and solutions that they actually really don't have. And they know they don't actually have any solutions. That is why they are depending on the Federal Reserve to increase interest rates in order to rein in inflation. So with that being said, people that continue to ask questions and to complain about the rise in prices, right, from inflation, there are some people in the mainstream liberal media that are telling the American people to shut up and to deal with it.
Where we are right now?
You know, I'm just going to say this, and if I get bang for it, I don't care. There is a great deal of Americans where it is uncomfortable that they're spending more, but they are not going to go under. You know, you got to stop complaining when there's so many people who literally the inflation rate means they may only have 2 meals instead of 3. There are Americans who did extremely well in the last 2 years in the market. You still have your job. And yeah, it's costing you more for gas, but guess what? You're still going to take that holiday, that 4th of July vacation. You could still eat out. So I'm going to need you to calm down and back off, because it feeds into this fear, and then this fear feeds into people making decisions that creates the very thing that they're fearful of.
Yeah, so according to this liberal elitist, if you're the average everyday working class American like us folks, okay, us peasants, don't complain, right? You've been doing so well over the past 2 years that you cannot complain about the fact that food prices are going up, gas prices are going up, rent is going up. Your money's becoming damn near worthless, okay? Stop complaining and shut up, all right? According to this liberal elitist. These guys hate us, right? They really do hate average, everyday, working class Americans like us. And that leads me to the Biden administration and their future predictions about the economy, in which a lot of people coming out here saying that we're headed towards a recession, okay? As we had a drop in GDP for the first quarter of this year, and it looks like there's some signs that a recession could be on the horizon. However, the Biden administration, including Joe Biden himself, is saying that we're not headed towards a recession. And if you say we're headed towards a recession, then you're just talking like a Republican.
I promise. Recession's even more likely than ever.
Not the majority of them aren't saying that. Come on, don't make things up, okay? Now you sound like a Republican politician. I'm joking. That was a joke. But all kidding aside, no, I don't think it is. I was talking to Larry Summers this morning, and there's nothing inevitable about a recession.
My best guess is that a recession is ahead. I base that on the fact that we haven't had a situation like the present with inflation above 4 and unemployment below 4 without a recession following within a year or two. And so I think the likelihood is that in order to do what's necessary to stop inflation, the Fed is going to raise interest rates enough that the economy will slip into recession. And I think that view, which was not a common view a couple months ago, is now the view of a number of statistical models and the view of a range of forecasters, and I think will increasingly become a consensus view.
So that is Larry Summers, the Obama economist that warned the Biden administration before they was about to spend the $1.9 trillion on their stimulus package that we didn't need because the economy was red hot at the time. He's the one that warned Biden that, this might cause unprecedented inflation, right, if you pass this bill. Now he's saying that we're going into a recession, okay, and that it is inevitable. However, the Biden administration is saying that we're not headed towards a recession. In fact, we're actually headed towards a transition period, which sounds a whole lot like when they was telling us that inflation was transitory. Take a look.
Yeah. The president said last week that there's no inevitability around a recession, but there is a greater deal of market concern about exactly that. And I know that inflation is your number one concern, but can you talk a little bit about if you're doing anything at all to prevent a recession or a rise in unemployment?
So the way that we see this, and you've heard us talk about this, that we're in a moment of transition. We have seen we are in a unique situation with our with the historical gains with our economy. The way that we see it is unemployment rate has held steady at 3.6, which is also near historic lows. Business investment remains strong. Household balance sheets remain strong. There was an analysis that came out recently that showed middle-class Americans had an additional $10,000 in savings then before the pandemic. Another analysis found that all income groups had higher checking account balances at the end of March than they had pre-pandemic. So we see that the strengths that our economic strength that we have seen from this past year, from the action that the president has taken with the American Rescue Plan, with what we have seen with the historical gains, that is going to help us deal with a recession. Right now, we don't see a recession right now. We're not in a recession right now. Right now, we're in a transition where we are going to go into a place of stable and steady growth, and that's going to be that's going to be our focus.
Yeah. So according to the Affirmative Action Press Secretary for the Biden administration, she's saying that we're in fact not in a recession, okay, and we're not going to go into a recession. We're in a period of sustained growth. Now, there are people out there that are calling BS on this prediction from the Biden administration that I think is going to go very, very, very badly, like their inflation prediction. And one of those people is Elon Musk, who was asked point blank about Biden saying that he doesn't think we're going into a recession. And I want you guys to look at Elon Musk's response. Take a look.
Joe Biden has just come out and said that a recession in America is not inevitable. How do you feel about the economy?
Well, I think a recession is inevitable at some point. As to whether there is a recession in the near term, I think that is more likely than not. It certainly isn't. It's not a certainty, but it appears more likely than not. And what do you think?
I'm with you. I agree with you. I think it's more likely.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody's saying, right? That a recession is more likely than not. In fact, anybody who is somebody in the business world is basically saying that a recession is more likely than not.
It's almost unavoidable. I got to think that the odds are that there's going to be a recession. Seeing a cooling of the economy is something that we believe is appropriate.
As to whether there is a recession in the near term, I think that is more likely than not.
We're going to have kind of a tough period here.
Our economists, as you've noted this morning, have increased their odds of a recession this year, but really more focused into next year.
If we can stabilize the energy market, I believe when the Fed does their job, we'll have inflation under control.
Inflation's not going to cure itself.
There will be, again, more surprises and more shocks coming from central banks.
I think this inflation is quite bad. It's intransigent. It's not transitory, and the consequence will be a recession.
Yeah, so I think these guys are correct, right? I think that they're factually correct when they say that a recession is inevitable, right? I mean, if anybody that knows any basic economic history knows that the economy kind of moves in cycles, right? There's booms and busts, right? There are periods of growth, and prosperity, and then there's periods of recession and depression. And speaking of depression, the real question is not whether or not we're going to go into a recession. The real question is whether or not we're going to actually go into a depression, okay? Because the Fed's hiking interest rates as fast as they're hiking interest rates is unprecedented. We haven't ever seen anything like this, and we're kind of in uncharted territory considering the amount of money that we spent during the pandemic when we shut the world down, and then we tried to open it up and not incentivize people to actually go back to work. Which probably is most likely the main reason why we're in this situation. So I'm going to go out on a limb and make a prediction here, because last year I predicted that the Feds are going to raise interest rates in the springtime, and I was very right about that, okay? As the Feds were saying, no, we're going to raise interest rates at the end of 2022, maybe the beginning of 2023. And I said, no, you're going to be raising interest rates probably in the winter of 2022, at the latest, the spring of 2022, because inflation is going to get out of control. Okay. So I'm going to make another prediction here and say that we will be officially in a recession by the beginning of next year, 2023. However, I don't think we're going to go into a deep recession. And one of the reasons why is because I think that the Feds, they only can raise interest rates so much because, quite simply, we can't afford it, right? Our debt, the interest on our debt that we've accumulated, our $30-some trillion in debt that we've accumulated, will be way too high for us to actually be able to sustainably pay for, right? So the Feds can only raise interest rates so much. And I think that interest rates are what is probably going to be the main driver of us being in a recession. However, we're going to have a problem because we got to raise interest rates in order to try to rein in inflation. So the question is that will things go back to normal enough? Okay, will the economy slow down enough to cool down inflation to the point where it would make sense for the Feds to stop raising interest rates? That's the real question, right? And I don't have answers to that question, but I do think that we will go into a Fed-induced recession. I don't think it will go into a depression because I don't think they will keep raising interest rates. I think they'll stop. However, we could still be facing some major inflationary pressures, specifically when it comes to food, because we may face some food shortages, right, from the global supply chain crisis that will, again, keep inflationary pressures on prices of food, which, again, could drive us into a depression, okay, if we're having food shortages and stuff like that. So I'm not saying that a depression isn't possible. I'm just hoping that it doesn't happen, right? For prediction's sake, I'm going to say that we're going to go into a recession, but not quite a depression. But we will see. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.